Welcome to the Eclectic Gamers Podcast. Today is Sunday, December 8th. This is episode 234. I am Tony.
I'm Dennis. You're back.
I am back.
What's been going on?
I had my trip to Florida, my 23 hours, because we changed our flight, or we changed our flight to an earlier flight. So I spent 23 hours in Florida, my first ever trip to Florida. And it was almost all either doing work-related stuff or asleep. Mm-hmm. So Florida seemed nice for the short amount of conscious time not working that I was there.
Yeah,
so it
great.
It was warm, which was way better than up here.
Yeah, it was pretty cold this last week in particular.
So that wasn't bad. I watched the Arcane finale since it had finally come out. I had a conversation going on our Discord about audiobooks, and it had come up. Somebody had talked about they were listening to the audiobook of Sonny Bono's audiobook, and was talking about how sad it was, because it is like brutally sad to start, as they said. Or I'm not Sonny Bono, Bono's book. I had the wrong name. Bono's book, and it was brutally sad to start. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'm really in the mental place in the holiday time to listen to a brutally sad audiobook. And I needed to listen to an audiobook because I was waiting for Wind and Truth to come out. Wind and Truth didn't come out until Friday after I got back from my trip. So I needed a different book to listen to on my trip. So I was like, well, Matt Denneman, who did Dungeon Crawler Carl, has several other books out, including a standalone book called Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon. And I was like, oh, that's a standalone book. I'll just grab that and listen to it. And that'll get me through, because it's like 20 hours, and that'll get me through the trip and everything. And it did that very well. It got me through the trip. Probably should have paid more attention to the description of the book before I bought it and started listening to it. When the description opens with fantasy meets horror in this gore-soaked standalone adventure. This book probably should have had the phrase on it, trigger warning. Yes, because it has all of the triggers in it. I mean, it was it was brutally sad and massively gory and very horrifying. And it was the first time where I ever had an audiobook or even a book where I had to sit down at one point and decide, am I going to finish this story? Not because it was so bad. It was very enjoyable. It was written well. I was interested to see where it went. But there were points of time where I just wanted to skip sections of it because it was just so gruesome and had so much just straight up almost torture porn going on. And I'm just like, and I finished it and it was it was a story. It
very festive.
It was brutal. Yeah, I mean, it was truly brutal, and sad and disturbing, and lots and lots of mental health issues in that book. So I segued from that to Wind and Truth because, you know,
it finally came out.
Yeah, it finally came out. And I mean, the Stormlight Archive books are also rife with mental illness. It's kind of a requirement to be a character in those books, or at least to be a main character, is you have to have some form of mental illness, because they all do. So, yeah, that's been enjoyable so far.
Okay.
Up to a point. Other than that, the only other thing I did was in December, Amazon Prime got Babylon 5, and I haven't watched it in several years, and that's like my favorite sci-fi show. So that's what I've been watching when I've been watching stuff instead of listening to audiobooks or reading physical books or doing anything else. So It's been busy.
Yeah, Bill, busy is good.
Yeah, it is.
'Tis the season.
Yes, very much so. What have you been up to?
Oh, a couple of games. So Callisto Protocol, I think I started it right around when we last recorded. I got that for my birthday, and I had it on my list a long time ago. I didn't remember what the game was about. So I was playing through it, and I was like, this is very Dead Space. And I guess the director of Dead Space is the director of Callisto Protocol.
That makes sense.
And then I was going along, and I saw one of the YouTube channels I watch is What Happened.
Right.
Or the series that he has. It's
What
called
Happened?
What Happened. And a What Happened came out on Callisto Protocol while I've been playing it because the game was plagued with issues. So anyway, I'm not through it yet. I feel like I'm getting close to the end, but yeah, so that is very much in that kind of mutated horror style. Not quite. It's a little more zombie-esque than Dead Space, but Dead Space is fairly zombie-esque. It's just the creatures looked less humanoid, I'd say. So anyway, but it's been fun. It's got a different combat mechanic, very melee-heavy style. Which, speaking of melee-heavy style, the other thing is, as of Thursday, Marvel Rivals finally released. So I had played the beta a few months ago of that game. So that's been pushed out. That is very much the hero shooter style. However, a lot of the characters are exceedingly melee characters like they are in the comics and such. So
You mean when they're not directly ripping off Overwatch characters?
Yes, when they're not. So there's a lot of capable. All right, it is not lost on me that Black Widow plays like Widowmaker. Maybe that one's more on the nose than anyone else. But anyway.
Yes, but so on the nose that even calling out the name, even though the character was created 50 some odd years before.
Yes.
Did you hear about that?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay. I'll shift this section because it's like 5 seconds in the video game section.
Okay.
Mike Ybarra, the former Blizzard boss, put out a tweet about Marvel Rivals complaining about how it was just a Overwatch ripoff. And one of his complaints was the fact that Black Widow was just a Widowmaker ripoff, even the name.
Yeah, the name. Oh, okay.
And people started pointing out that the character of Black Widow was created 50 plus years before Overwatch existed.
Mm-hmm.
He deleted the tweet.
Yeah, you probably very much have to. Well, yeah. No, that's he should have. Honestly, wouldn't even have taken that much research. He had to know the character of Black Widow was in the movies before Overwatch was out.
Well,
so I mean, that alone should have been like a clue. Poor Mike, very hard life. So anyway, been playing that. It's been fun. So far. So I bought my it's like a half season for the first season. So I bought my season pass to work on my battle pass with that. And I would say the biggest thing, they added a lot of characters. So it really has quite a robust roster. Definitely not enough maps. They've got more than they did in the beta, but it still just feels very samey on the map front. Of course, Overwatch had years of time to develop a lot of maps. So anyway, but I have been enjoying that. So that is what I've been doing. And with all that said, let's go ahead and let's hop into pinball.
Pinball time.
All right. There's not a lot
And
here.
the living's easy.
We were one of the earliest, thank you, Spooky, to cover Evil Dead Pinball in our prior episode. So that's what most of the shows that I have heard have been doing, has been talking about Evil Dead Pinball, but we talked about it first. So there's nothing.
It's so weird. Normally we're the last people to talk about
You
something.
ain't first, you're last. But this time we were first. I don't know what to do with my hands, but I know to give Spooky credit for letting us go ahead and have that as a major selling point for this show that doesn't cost anyone money to listen to. However, I wanted to go ahead and open with a comment someone left on our Pinside thread. Pinbar Clay wrote and said, "Just want to say I love the show, never miss it, and had no idea there was a dedicated Pinside thread until Dennis mentioned it on the last episode. But for heaven's sake, stop depriving us of Rumor Corner." All right. Well, the dedicated thread is really just, it's really just to link the episodes. There are a few people that, like, mostly it's people posting corrections in the thread. It's not like an active thread. I honestly would discontinue the thread, except it is one of our higher referral methods to the show last I looked in terms of third-party sites, whereas Tilt Forums I finally dropped the thread. I posted a note, I think a couple months ago, on there saying, I ain't getting any traffic from Tilt Forum, so I'm tired of logging in here and putting this link in because it's just a waste of time. But Pinside's not a waste of time. We do actually get some people that seem to just listen through Pinside for whatever reason. So anyway, that's why that thread exists. Rumor Corner doesn't really serve a good purpose anymore. There are rumors constantly being reported, like in print media online at this point, that if you want rumors, they're everywhere. They're so everywhere now. They're almost collated at this point. So I just don't really see the point in having a constantly going rumor corner. Tony and I have discussed the idea of, for Patreon at patreon.com/eclectic_gamers, going ahead and saying, you know what, rumor corner is going to be something that we put behind the paywall and then we give it to you. We're still discussing that. However, because Pinbar Clay, let me try and get it right, brought it up, I will give you a rumor corner right now.
Rumor corner, rumor corner, rumor corner, rumor corner, rumor corner. Dennis Crystal's got the news before Nap Arcade. Is that right, Tony? Yeah.
Okay. So here's the rumor corner rumor. Those of you who have been following the other rumors out there about American Pinball's Cuphead, you've probably been seeing, if you read the ones that are reported online, there have been rumors that it's on the line at American Pinball. And now there are rumors that it is not on the line at American Pinball. And I know what you all are saying. You are saying, Tony, Dennis, I need rumor corner. Help us. What is the reality? What is the truth? Answer this mystery. Is it on the line or not? This is the answer. It is on the line at American Pinball, according to the sources of Rumor Corner, but it is not on the assembly line at American Pinball.
Well, that's weird.
Indeed. What does it mean? That is the mystery of the corner. I only have one question for you, Tony. Are you not rumor-tained?
I guess. I'm still trying to figure out how it's on the line, but not on.
It's not on the assembly line, but it's on some other line. That's what that means.
I wonder if it means it's in the. It's like in queue. It's in the file. It's in the ether, man. They're in the cloud.
The cloud.
They're making sure it's all the wibblies wibble and the wadgets and it goes ping 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 and all the good stuff before it goes on the line to be assembled.
Well, one never dives too deeply into the mysteries of Rumor Corner. We really just allow it to exist in its corner and provide rumors. So there you go. That's Rumor Corner. All right. Last thing that I have for the pinball section is actually a discussion for us to hold about pinball for this year. So because things are super light, as we had noted, there's not much in the wake of Evil Dead that has happened in the hobby. We're near the end of 2024. We've got one more episode here just before Christmas. And then is that our last episode of 2024? I think it is.
I think so.
So anyway, we're close.
It's
We're close.
right before.
Right. We're close because we got one like a couple days before Christmas. So,
yeah, we've got one on the 22nd. That's the last one of the year.
Yep. All right. So I figured, all right, we might, who knows what sort of recap things we'll plan for that. We're not at the point of we're writing up those show notes. But for this one, I wanted to go ahead and have a chat because I don't really expect much in the way of, if there's a new release, there's a new release and we'll cover it like a new release. But
I would be amazed if there was a new release.
You never know with Stern. I mean, a lot of times they have put out something in December. I'm not really expecting it in the wake of their remaster of Metallica, coupled with it hasn't been that long for Uncanny X-Men, but you never necessarily know. It just sort of depends on if they want to get a head start on their January release.
Chris, if they want to do something like that, they might release it post Christmas before New Year's.
They could. I personally don't think so, though. I think we're not going to see anything from them until the new year. However, I thought we should have just a little conversation, just a little back and forth, Tony, about things that we thought were sort of the most interesting, good, bad, or whatever, just as long as they're interesting in terms of 2024 happenings. I'm keeping that pretty general. But in order to serve as a refresher so we know, and this is not comprehensive because you get nuanced when you start throwing in things like the anniversary, 70th anniversary, Black and White Godzilla, and all the rest of it. But here are some of the key 2024 releases that did happen. Obviously, Evil Dead from Spooky is the most recent. Out of Stern, we saw Metallica's remastering, which is, more than a vault, so I threw it in here. It was seen as a big deal. Uncanny X-Men, John Wick, Jaws was real early in the year, but it is a 2024 release. DPX, PX is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. JJP, we got the Avatar Battle for Pandora, not Elton John. That was actually last year. Pedretti Gaming did the Funhouse remake. Pinball Brothers did ABBA. American Pinball had Barry O's Barbecue Challenge, and The Princess Bride out of Multimorphic. I would say those are some of the... I would name those as the key releases of 2024. So kind of using that, but we can talk about anything besides the games if we want. But I was just kind of wondering, Tony, anything you want to start with an item that you thought was really interesting, good or bad, but just that you found sort of interesting in pinball this year?
I need to play more of these games. That's what's interesting. Much like you, I've not had a chance to go out and play games quite as much as I was used to there for a while. This whole year's been kind of rough for me when it's come to actually going out and playing games. So I've not gotten a lot of time on all of the new ones. Several of them I've gone out and played, but I've not been being as deep a part of the tournament scene as I used to be. So it has been more of I go out and play on my own time type thing. But I think overall, the big thing this year, and I think the big driving thing that we're going to be looking at, especially going into next year, is just going to be the cost of things and how the changing economic realities affects the hobby as a whole. I think that's going to be the big thing.
It could be.
I don't think it's going to be the most interesting thing. The most interesting thing is always going to be see what new games come out and which ones should be a huge hit and don't. Obviously, John Wick crashed and burned. Somebody walked up and shot John Wick in the back of the head instead of the dog. It's the game that I would have expected to have been a huge hit just out the gate, and it is most definitely not. Avatar is I've not had a chance to play it, but I'm always it's weird to me to see basically repeat themes coming out from other companies. It's weird, and it's weird to me that JJP has done it twice. Yeah,
I mean. It is interesting, but I mean, even Stern repeats their own themes too, like X-Men.
Like X-Men. So, I mean, it's one of those weird things that there's so much out there to see repeats, especially when repeats aren't necessarily specifically. I mean, I guess I can see Avatar. It's been a long time since the last Avatar came out, but then like Pirates, I don't know that Pirates really needed a repeat when it had happened, but obviously that wasn't this year. But
sure. But Guns N' Roses too.
Guns N' Roses, that was definitely a repeat, and some people loved that game. It's an interesting, I think we're in a little bit of an interesting place when it comes to licensing and themes right now. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see what licenses and what things happen next year.
Yeah. I think this is I'm going to use the word conservative. It's a very conservative year. Not surprising in the wake of the pandemic, in the wake of people now getting back to doing more travel and other things, and in the wake of at least a high perception of inflation, which, while better than it had been, say, the prior year, has applied a lot of pressures on what people expect out of pinball. I think we've seen companies trying to hold the line on their game prices, while it does seem to me that some, namely Stern, seem to be trying to raise the prices on accessories in an attempt to make the profit margins that they were hoping to do by upping game prices, but they worry about the impact on sales, which I believe, despite, I can't say from all accounts, but despite certain accounts, I do think that game sales are down this year. I think it will be a weaker year than 2023 was for total sales, even though by and large, it does seem like, it's a mix. I'd say it's a mixed reaction on gaming this year. I think Stern actually overall had a pretty solid year. I agree with you. John Wick ended up flopping way harder than probably anyone expected. Obviously, there was the controversy of the lack of guns in the art that caused a lot of people to really hate on that game early on. However, we saw the same thing happen with Jaws and Shark No Eat Ball. being a whole huge thing. Something that Stern ended up leaning into with a lot of humor, doing things where people could even stick a ball in the mouth of the toy shark on the game and stuff, really playing into that. And that being said, on the flip side with John Wick, there are lots of guns and gunplay in the video assets that go on in the game. So, but regardless, having played John Wick, there's plenty of reason not related to controversy about why that game is not popular.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's not that fun of a game,
No.
in my opinion. But everything else that they did was. So we have not played the Uncanny X-Men. However, the fan response has been huge. Jaws is probably, of all the games I have played of 2024 releases, it's my favorite of the year, easily, which isn't too surprising given it's an Elwyn title. But it's a fun player.
If you don't want to play the technicality game, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I'm not playing no technicality game.
If you wanted to play the technicality game, in that case, then, like you said, Godzilla's the best game of the year because they had the special anniversary release.
I haven't played that version, though.
It doesn't matter. I've played enough Godzilla to know that it's better than any of the other games this year. But that doesn't count because that's not technically a this year game.
And I do think Stern was, while they were probably surprised at how poorly John Wick did, I think they were also surprised at how well Metallica Remastered did. That game, people have talked a lot of praise about the Uncanny X-Men, but it was pretty easy, even with a reduced count, to get a hold of an LE. Those Metallica Remastered LEs, which were limited to 500, that went quick. And, of course, that is a very successful layout. And so I think that... So that Stern's definitely farming that remastered field. Oh, if you own Sam Games, get ready for them to be devalued because, wow, Stern, all that told them was do it. Do it.
Well, and it doesn't hurt that the Metallica is probably one of their best music pens.
Oh, yeah. And one that didn't have a history of a lot of vaults.
Right.
Like AC/DC got vaulted a lot.
Yes.
There were some other games in the Sam lineup that had a lot of vaults. Iron Man, of course, is probably the most famous. Star Trek got vaults. So there are plenty of other Sam games that didn't. So... And even if they did get vaults at this point, if they're going to do video assets and stuff, I think there's going to be a lot of room for growth out of that. The JJP Avatar thing, that was a flash in the pan, it felt like. Again, I still haven't played it, so I have no comment on the gameplay. However, I just remember that the lighting got really, really praised. A lot of people who did play it had some issues with how the game played. Not that it played not like it had... Not to the degree of like John Wick, which was also a new designer.
Right.
But rather that it just, I don't know, in some very general level, it didn't really, quote unquote, work for people. I don't know if it was so much the rules as the layout, but it just, it felt like there wasn't a lot there compared to, everyone's always going to go back and compare to Wizard of Oz and such. I'd say Spooky's Evil Dead I would have said is one of the best theme integrations done in years, except Labyrinth already kind of set that standard. So, but I think it's right there with Labyrinth in terms of they leaned into the sculpts and such to really try and encapsulate the world of Evil Dead, which, as we talked about last episode, was really smart for them because as basically a pure horror theme, it will struggle to find a wide audience. So you've just got to really lean in on people that are okay with having horror, getting this because it's got Bruce's voice in it, and it's got the clips from the show, and it's got the sculpts that are celebrating, it's got a really cool topper, and all of that sort of thing. And so I think they did the best they could with a theme that they love more than the world loves. So pretty smart there. In terms of negatives, I do want to... some of this stuff... Again, flash in the pan sorts of things. I for a hot minute, I heard about the Funhouse remake, and then I kind of quit hearing about the Funhouse remake. It's Funhouse. It's not the game that would be at the top of my list to remake, but I imagine it's done all right. Pinball Brothers ABBA, I barely ever hear anything about that. I've heard it plays better than Queen, which we have played, and
correct.
But it's a less popular band, at least in the States, than Queen was. So again, you don't hear too much about it. I remember there was a little bit of buzz at TPF regarding The Princess Bride, but I don't know. I haven't seen a wave of people saying like they did with Weird Al, where it's like we are going to get a P3 now. I But I don't follow all the same threads I used to. So
True.
I just don't know if it had some cool features to it, but it didn't seem to get the same, even though I think it's a better pick than Weird Al. It didn't seem to get the same reaction like Weird Al did when it was announced. But again, that was in the pandemic and people were different.
Right. Well, and I feel like the kind of people who are like, oh, wow, I'm going to give Multimorphic a chance and oh, I'm really excited about this. We're pulled into the Weird Al. And a large number of them don't own a machine anymore. I've talked to a lot of them who got their machine and had it for a short time, and then were just like, no, this isn't what I want, and I don't want it in my collection, and got rid of it.
Well, and for most pinball collectors, that's a pretty typical thing that they like. Getting rid of a machine is normal,
right?
So it just doesn't lend itself to their model, their particular business model.
Correct.
However, I again, the overall reaction to the gameplay, I remember playing Princess Bride, and I thought it was fun.
I thought so.
There are two standouts that I think were, setting aside John Wick, which we already talked about. There are two standouts for games that have not done so well. But that depends on what we mean by not done so well. So the first one that sales-wise did perfectly fine, but got judged hardcore, including by me, was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. A very polarizing game, hiding behind its sculpts, where it's still, I think, sold out. But
I'm sure.
But reaction to there is no code of note in it, mixed reaction to the animation and display, polarizing art package, terrible layout, and of course the notion of whether or not it is okay to celebrate J-pop at this stage, which basically, even though he wasn't involved with the project, was taking his design and changing just enough of it to actually make it work.
Right.
That one was a weird one to me, even though I think people saw it coming from a mile away, given the nature of what was getting set up with DPX. And then one that you and I do have experience, multiple games worth of experience on, Barrio's Barbecue Challenge, perhaps the worst concept and execution of a pinball theme I have seen in my entire time in this hobby. And I was in this hobby when WWE came out. Seriously, that nothing from how often it broke. The very first game you and I played at TPF reset on us.
It did.
After the first ball was done. To a layout which is not the worst layout in the world, but is just a hodgepodge of berry tropes, to just dripping meats rotate. I mean, you talked about the kaiju surgeon and traumatizing with gore, but I mean, I like delectable barbecue. I'm in Kansas City. For us, but barbecue is like the political solution to everything. But I don't want to see drippy meats on my back box display. I just don't. The hot rod aspect to the game felt like it was at least at the time we played it, was in no way integrated to the theme. It was a bad theme. And barbecue is life out here, and it's a bad theme. And then you start hearing notions like the expectation that barbecue joints were going to buy the game. It's like, you don't understand barbecue. Look, this is the third time I'm saying it in as many seconds. This barbecue country here, barbecue places don't want pinball machines. This is not Pizza Hut. Look, you walk in, there are two things you do. You stand in line to get your barbecue, and you eat your barbecue. It's already made. It's barbecue. You're not sitting there waiting for them to bake burnt ends. It's not a pizza. And these places out here, if they are sucky barbecue, they go out of business right away.
Oh, yeah.
We only tolerate good barbecue around here. So there's no need to have pinball machines to keep you in a barbecue place. It's all about the turn. It's all about getting the turnover on the tables. A bar and grill, a pub, a pizza place, it can make sense to have a game room for a variety of reasons. For a barbecue joint, all that floor space is wasted money that could have been made on tables.
Mm-hmm.
Totally missing the market. It is not a market that will buy that sort of stuff. It's not a car dealership with plenty of showroom space. It's not how barbecue works. But it was clearly done by a bunch of people who know nothing and have no passion about barbecue, because you'd have known it. Barry may have had that passion, but unfortunately he wasn't there when the game finally came out to be able to tell them barbecue joints are not going to be buying this game. Get real, guys. But if they had any knowledge of pinball, once they played this, they'd be like, no. I don't want to drive customers away.
I don't want to drive away my customers.
It was so disappointing. And I had no expectations.
Oh,
on this
yeah.
game.
I was like you. I had zero expectations.
But when you consider the polarizing and I would argue flawed release of Galactic Tank Force at least tried to do something that felt like it wanted to be pinball. This is, and then they talk about using the layout as a white label game for different themes and stuff. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on with it. I never know what's going on with American Pinball. This was their worst release in the history of the company. And what a sad thing that this was the only thing they put out in 2024.
Yeah.
Because there ain't no Cuphead.
Disagree with you.
So,
I don't get American Pinball at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Every single thing about that company at this point makes zero sense to me.
but anyway, so, okay. That's just, I thought we would have a fun little chat about pinball for 2024.
No, I mean, there was some interesting stuff. There were some good things. There's some bad things. I mean, I don't think it was the best year since we started the podcast, but I don't think it was the worst year since we started the podcast for pinball stuff. So
there were a decent number of games that came out.
yeah.
So we at least had stuff to talk about.
It's not like some of those early years where our year in review would be us talking about everything Stern put out, and that was it because nobody else put a game out that year.
Yeah. The year where Rush won everything. That was a really light year.
That was a light year.
All right. Well, we can go ahead and go over to video games. We actually did get a couple of emails related to video games, so I put them in the start of our video game segment. The first one was written by, they're both from a Chris, but different Chris's. So the first email was from Chris G, who wrote in and said, Dennis, don't fall into the trap of playing work the game. Excuse me, satisfactory with Tony. You work hard enough. I welcome a Daft Punk game. Well, the Daft Punk part was a reference to pinball, but I put this in because clearly Chris does not want me to fall into the trap Travis Murray did and start playing Satisfactory. And he's using his words to fight against what you've tried to do. Seduce people into building factories.
I mean,
it's a dark
if
place.
you let Satisfactory take total control of your life.
This qualifier is so specific.
He is correct. It does become work the game. I play it, but I've not been playing it to that extent. I specifically will go out of my way to play other things instead of it, just so that I don't fall into I get off of work and then I sit down, and when it's time to relax, I start working again. So, I think it's a very important thing because it is a game you can fall into that. I understand where he's coming from. He's not wrong.
I should probably avoid it then.
But it is definitely a game that lends itself to that.
Mm-hmm.
But,
okay. Well, Chris G wanted to warn me. Chris C did not want to warn us, but he did want to alert us. He wrote in saying, just going to leave this right here. And he posted, I put a screen grab of part of what he had, but it was a link to Reddit, which was a thread discussing how Star Citizen has now raised over $750 million in funding. And given you've followed Star Citizen for so long, I thought this might be a good time for you to, I know we talked about it not all that long ago, but
yeah, like last episode.
But now with this threshold
Right.
being reached, I thought, Tony, what? I mean,
Yeah, they did
this is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and there's still. It depends on. Some people will say there's a lot to show for it. There's people who've been playing Star Citizen in its various alpha builds for years now. It's open free weekend or like 2 week free for everybody thing that they did. Went over really well. It did a very good job, and they got a lot of people buying in and a lot of good press. They're getting closer to the release of Squadron 42. They're supposedly in line. It's coming up soon. I don't know what soon is. Sometime in the next couple of years. They've released some cinematics from Squadron 42 that are, I'll be honest, they're amazing. They look really good. It's some really interesting stuff. it's also at the point that like the audio was for Squadron 42 was recorded so many years ago. I read an article that one of the voice actors forgot that they were in it until they saw the trailer and heard themselves. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot I recorded that.
That's funny.
Because it was so long ago. But I just can't. There's been starting over the last several years to be more and more pushback about it being this never ending game that's just earning huge amounts of money. And they had all sorts of issues, and the return to the office stuff that they fired up last year caused some issues and some waves throughout the community, but it's still rolling along. I've still not played it. I bought into it when it initially launched all those years ago. My $100 is part of that. Almost $1 billion.
Yeah, you're a part of that.
I'm part of that, but we'll see. I mean, it is. What are they showing? They're showing that's 5,400,000 people have bought in to it. So I wonder how many of those people don't even remember it.
I wonder how many of those people are not alive anymore.
I'm sure there's a good number of them. We'll see.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see where that one goes.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on Chris's email. All right. So what do we got that is not Star Citizen related?
Well, big thing. Been some talk about in the Discord. The early access to Path of Exile 2 launched Friday.
I'm not playing that because I'm busy playing Marvel.
Yeah, I'm not playing it either. I've been trying to thin out my early access games, but they had more than 1 million early access redemptions. They even came out and said, "Okay, there's probably going to be some queues on opening weekend. There's no way around it." And they did have multiple launch issues, which again isn't a surprise for an early access game with that many people trying to get it. From some people I've talked to, though, it sounds like for an early access game, it's pretty good. Okay. So and they've none of their issues have been hugely groundbreaking. So good for them. I mean, Path of Exile is definitely the game for the people who like the just left in my head.
Yeah, what style of game is it? I don't even remember.
It's a Diablo. It's a Diablo game. It's a Diablo style game, but that kind of looter type game. So the original Path of Exile kind of became the big thing when Diablo 3 failed. Okay. So Path of Exile 2 will hopefully let people scratch that itch who have not been happy with Diablo 4. So we'll see. We'll see how that one goes. As much as I hate to say this,
I'm not surprised at this at all.
Nintendo's Alarmo
hardware, it was their hardware release, the October hardware. Beautiful.
Has been so popular.
It's so cool, except for the one with making the Splatoon sounds to wake you up.
That they've had to delay its full release in Japan because they don't have enough. So far, it's only had a full release in Europe and the US. In Japan, it's only being released to Nintendo subscribers, the big Switch subscribers.
Rolex killer.
But they're so far behind, and they're on making them, and they're so popular that they've pushed back their general release. Because if you ordered one right now today in Japan, you wouldn't get it until sometime in February. That's how popular Alarmo is.
That's right. You didn't believe in it. I was like, it's a cool clock. People are going to love it. People love watches and clocks. They just don't know it.
They just don't do it. Apparently, Nintendo has also, in their ongoing fight with the modding community and more specifically the piracy community, has, let's go deeper. One of a subreddit that was called like Switch pirates or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was kind of on the nose.
It was on the nose. It was super obvious what it was. It wasn't We Like Trees or
Pirates
something
as
like
a yar?
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we make pirate ships out of sticks.
Right.
Oh, that'd have been so cool though. Now I want there to be we make them out of switches.
Switches, yay! But they're pirating Switch stuff. One of the mods of the subreddit turned out to be, surprise of surprise, a huge pirate that they're suing.
What?
And they're going after. And they filed to get information from all 200,000 subreddit members. Because they think a lot of them were involved in piracy as well. For some reason, these people on a piracy subreddit they thought might be involved with piracy.
They're going on a fishing expedition.
So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how that works through the courts for them. But maybe don't do your illegal stuff online, like directly. Just like everybody who's committing crimes, don't live stream yourself robbing the bank. It doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form.
Or when you go really, really fast in your car that you're purportedly reviewing, and then you blur out the speedometer and don't remember that car also has a speedometer over by the glove box.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that either. Basically, don't do stuff. Don't do crime.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Maybe don't drive 100 miles an hour through a school zone.
Maybe.
No matter how much you like your Cybertruck.
Cybertruck hype.
I did see a funny video online where they slashed up the video of the Cybertruck selling. Oh, it's got all the space to store your stuff, and it seals so in the rain your kid's stuff in the back doesn't get wet. And it's so they'll doing the clips of that interspersed with the lady opening up the rear of her hearse and showing how much stuff you can store in the hearse and all
that's
the
funny.
stuff.
I like those ones. I've seen a few of them where they'll clip the person like doing the show off ASMR where she'll like tap stuff and she'll go Rolls Royce, and then there's someone else that does this like you go. It's a rust.
It was very much that style of video, but instead of the Cybertruck, it was a hearse. And then when it ends, the Cybertruck is all driving off and stuff, and then it flips over to the hearse, and you just hear Dragula blaring as loud as he can.
Dragula, yes.
So, Foamstars from Square Enix.
No, Foamstar.
It had such a great year from its launch back in the early spring, or like maybe even late winter, call it February or March launch. And then in October, it went free to play because it was doing so well.
Yes, always the greatest sign.
It's always the best sign when you go to free to play less than a year after release. Well, they're kicking out a new season called The Party Goes On.
Oh, yeah.
It's the final season.
Oh, no.
And they're going to end overall support for the game. They're leaving the servers up for now. They're leaving the game active and out there, but they're not going to be doing any more major work, and no content will be created for the game after this. They're just going to create a thing where you could basically choose of the several seasons that have come out while the game's been open. You'll just be able to go back through and choose one of them and play it. That's it. So the Splatoon killer
no
failed.
If only they had been in Alarmo, they'd had a chance.
I know, that's what they should have been. They needed more hardware. That was the problem. It should have shipped with a foam gun. PlayStation there are reports coming out of no surprise that they're working on a handheld version of the PS5.
You think they'll call it something fun like the PS High Five?
I'd say no, that's silly. But the truth of the matter is I mean, they literally called their last portable the PSP. So, I mean, they'll do something.
Right. Well, I mean, that one was on the nose, but.
Right. But it wouldn't surprise me if they did something.
I was just thinking because
weird.
fits in your hand, so high five. No,
it melts in your hand, not on your console.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the amended version.
Yeah.
It'll be a big hit.
It'll be huge. I mean, Microsoft has talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. The Steam Deck has done extremely well on the PC side for Steam. So we could see it one of these days. Microsoft has decided that they're going to get rid of Xbox avatars. Dennis, your avatar's going to die.
No, I don't even know where he hides anymore, but he's out there living on, but not for long.
Not for long. To be fair, this is only the new avatar system since Xbox One.
Yes.
The original Xbox 360 avatars, they're fine. They're not getting rid of those avatars. Those avatars are like hardwired into the system. There's so many things that actively require.
There are games that make you play with the avatars.
Yeah. So they're not getting rid of those. It's only the new avatars that they rolled out for the Xbox One series stuff that they're like, there's not enough engagement. We're getting rid of it.
Well, they're not on the dashboard or anything anymore. Like they used to be a big part of the console's menu system.
Right.
And they just aren't. Like I don't know where to find my avatar, quite frankly.
Well, nobody uses it. But if somebody did use it and spent money on the cosmetics, they're going to be refunded that money.
Oh, that's nice.
So
my 361, one of my little cosmetics. I don't think I ever bought a cosmetic, but used to be able to sometimes get them like achievements. You'd get them for certain things. And so I have the little Meat Boy from Super Meat Boy as my companion. And I had to win Super Meat. That's why I won Super Meat Boy. I wanted the little pet. I wanted the pet meat. And that game was so hard. And I have never won a hard platformer since I won Super Meat Boy.
Super Meat Boy was a hard game.
It was. And for those that are like, really, you're that good? You got through Cotton Candy Alley or whatever it was called. No, just a regular game as Meat Boy. Not the other, not the, like, it was Meat Boy. So it was like, no, there was more harder than what I did. But that was hard enough.
You didn't have to go through like the New Game Plus where they're like, oh, okay, you think you're good. Mm-hmm. Time to go cry in the corner.
Yeah. No, I had to get through all the regular levels and go and rescue Bandage Girl and get back out with her.
Right.
So I got through and I got to her. I was like, yes, I did it. And then it's like, no, now you must go back the way you came. I'm like, no.
No. And now it's an escort quest. Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh my gosh. Still. The game's been out forever.
It's been out for over a year. Their actual playership, we talked about it last episode, is higher now than it's ever been since the mods came out and everything.
The Game Awards changed the rules to allow DLC to count as a new game so that Baldur's Gate 3 has a chance to win again.
Well, and it probably will. And if that's not enough, considering Liren has basically said, oh, no, we're done with Baldur's Gate. We're moving on to our new games now. That said, next year they're putting out patch 8, which is to be the last major patch that includes 12 new subclasses. So a new subclass for every for every one of the classes, and full crossplay. So if me on my computer wants to play with you on Xbox, we can. So
I might finally get this game.
That's all going to be part of their patch 8. So that's going to drive their numbers even higher.
Okay.
And to end on a high note. A game.
I hate that we still talk about this game.
I love it, actually.
I hate it. I hated it when I saw it come out. I laughed when it was a piece of trash.
I know. It's not a piece of trash anymore.
It just goes to show, if you give yourself almost 10 more years to work on something, anything could be turned around.
You can polish a turd, that's for sure. Just takes enough time and elbow grease.
Yep.
No Man's Sky. 8 years after release, has now on Steam moved up to very positive.
Yay.
8 years. That's all it takes.
So you're saying there's a chance.
From the overwhelming negative, just complete crash and burn that this game was on launch, it's now like the shining beacon of I can fix it.
It can be done. We have the money.
So
see, And then we see what happens with Foamstars, and you're like, why don't you try Square?
They
You
just
have all
need to
those
try
resources.
harder. They just need to
harder.
put more time into
That's
it.
right. They don't
8
want to.
years, polish it. I mean, it's just No Man's Sky to have spent all this time and moved it up so much compared to like Concord that was out for 12 days and then they deleted it and gave everybody their money back.
They were like, let's pretend this has never been made.
This isn't the game you're looking for. I mean,
Concord, isn't that a grape? What are you talking about?
right? I don't know what you're talking about. Didn't he spend years and millions of dollars on that game? I don't even work in gaming. I don't know what you're talking about.
I do tax software. What do you mean?
So there we are, Dennis. There's our video game look.
Okay. Well, we will have one more episode of 2024.
We will.
Out in a couple of weeks just before Christmas, so you'll have something to listen to while you drive to the in-laws. But until then, if you want to reach out to us about anything to discuss, you can email us eclecticgamerspodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach us at facebook.com/eclecticgamerspodcast. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, we are at patreon.com/eclectic_gamers, where you can support the show for as little as $1 a month.
We're at Twitch and Instagram as eclectic_gamers.
And so we will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, my name is Dennis.
I have been Tony.
Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.